Okay, this is video number 3 on frost, and I'm trying to get this all together so you'll be able to watch and start thinking about frost as quickly as possible. This is Mending Wall, and since I'm asking you to write an essay about that on the test, I'm kind of tempted not to. I want to leave a lot of the work of interpretation to you. I just want to maybe make some suggestions. So rather than reading the whole thing to you, I'm going to have it out and I'll kind of go through it. And again, pose questions as I'm going through it. This is another one that you will probably have heard bits of, even if you haven't studied the whole thing. At the beginning, we're told that something there is that doesn't level wall. We're not told what that is, but if you look at the lines right after, it seems like it's winter or time, because that's the time of, and this is something that you probably don't have a lot of experience with in the Corpus Christi area, but Frost spent his early years in New England. He got to California. He actually went to England and then California. So he wasn't as fond of New England as some people try to make him out to be. Still, he would have had experience with something that we don't have much experience with here, which is ironically called frost heaves. That is the name of the frozen groundswell that causes damage to human structures like walls if they're made out of boulders, because the ground expands and contracts as it freezes and thaws. So in the cycle of a couple of seasons, you can have significant damage to a stone wall that separates the land that belongs to two different people, to two neighbors. So these are two neighbors who have a wall between them, and they've clearly decided that every year they need to go out and fix the wall. That's how they've done things in the past. They've done things this way maybe because it's habit, maybe because they mutually agreed that they wanted the fence there, the wall there. And at first it seems like it's winter, it's just seasons that cause the wall to spill the boulders down to their land and out of the wall. But then there's a reference to people who would come along and deliberately knock holes in the wall so they can chase the rabbits that they're hunting. And the speaker says that he has come after the people who damaged the walls and made repair. Interesting that the speaker's the one who has done that, because later his point of view is going to seem to shift. But early in the poem, he suggests that he's the one who fixes the wall when hunters knock holes in it. And it's almost like he loses his train of thought, because he says they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. It's almost like he's left a gap in the poem that he forgot he's supposed to be talking about a wall. So he's like, oh, I got to get back on topic. The gap. I'm talking about gaps in walls, not hunters, gaps. I don't know how they got there, even though I say some of them were caused by hunters. But they're all these gaps in the wall in spring. And I go and let my neighbor know. And we walk the line and set the wall between us once again. So far, all the evidence of wall mending is that the neighbor is somebody who's all in on it, but that the speaker is totally in agreement. He's the one who goes after the hunters and fixes the gaps. He's the one who goes and lets the neighbor know, hey, it's mending day, let's fix the wall. It's hard work because they got to pick up these boulders, and some of them fit back nicely, but some of them are rounded by erosion and they roll right back down. And he tries to turn it into a game. He says, we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are till our backs are turned. But really, he's probably getting a little frustrated that they keep picking up these boulders and they keep rolling it off the wall again. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Because it's at this point that he decides it really is just a game. He says it's just another kind of outdoor game, one on his side. It comes to little more. The grammar's really important here. It comes to little more than a game. Colon, there where it is we do not need the wall. Colon, he is all pine and I am apple orchard. There may be places where they need the wall, but there they don't need it. That could be where they've gotten to in fixing the wall. That maybe there are places where they do need a wall because they have, one purpose for walls, if two people are farmers, is to keep like your cows on one side and the other person's cows on the other side. But if all they're doing at this point is making a wall between two different kinds of trees, they don't really have to worry about the trees crossing, because trees don't do that unless you're reading something by Tolkien. They don't move around. And if human beings are tempted to cross from one direction to another because they're after something in the trees, it would be to get to something on the speaker's side, because the speaker's the one who's got apples. The neighbor's just got pine trees. Nobody cares about pine trees. People would want to knock the wall down to get to the apples that belong to the speaker. The speaker says, my apple trees will never get across and eat the cones from under his pines. He's saying, it's kind of a joke, it's like if we had cows, yeah, sure, but there aren't cows here. Or there aren't cows at the place where we don't need to fix the wall anymore. Or I'm tired of doing this stupid thing, so I've decided this is the place where we should stop. And this is a reason that I thought of afterwards. But the main reason is I'm tired. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say any of that. He tries to make a joke about apple trees coming across to eat cones from pines. The neighbor only says one thing in the whole poem. He says it a couple of times. Good fences make good neighbors. A lot of ways to read that. One is that you need boundaries in relationships. If you don't have boundaries, then people blur into each other in unhealthy ways. Also, this is the way that they socialize every year. They get together to fix the fence, so they actually have a reason for talking to each other. It's when they come to mend the wall. It's a social occasion. But there is the privacy element. We're better neighbors if you can't see all my business. And that could make the poem a metaphor for all kinds of relationship dynamics. And I'll give you a real easy for instance to kind of put this into a context in a minute. I want to get through the poem first. The speaker says, spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Question, does he say that out loud, or is he just wondering that? Why do walls make good neighbors? Isn't it, if we had cows, but we don't have cows here. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Offense. A little bit of a pun there. But again, I go back to the question, does he actually say any of this out loud? Or is he just wondering whether he could get the neighbor to think about this stuff? It seems like stuff that the speaker is thinking about now that he hadn't thought about before. I could say elves, but it's not elves exactly. There's something that doesn't love a wall. This time it's not nature. It's something about people that doesn't love a wall. It's the same expression that opened the poem. But now it's not talking about ice that makes boulders fall down in the winter. It's people who don't need walls between them because they don't need those private spaces. They know each other better. And it seems like the speaker, for whatever reason, has decided at this point that they don't need the wall anymore. And the neighbor still wants the wall. The speaker did not agree with that position at the beginning. He was totally eager to rebuild the wall. But either he had an epiphany, light bulb went off, and he said, we don't need the wall anymore. Or he just got tired, and this is his excuse. And you never know which it is. Maybe he realized that good relationships need to go beyond old boundaries, or they can't get deeper. And maybe that's the best way to think about this. It's like in a relationship. You could think of it, and I'll give you a couple of ways to think about it. The disagreement about walls here, if it's about boundaries in private relationships, think about it in a relationship where you're with somebody and that person says, give me your phone. I want to see everything that's on there. And you say, if you love me, you wouldn't ask. And the other person said, if you love me, you would give me your phone. It's interesting when that kind of conversation happens between two people, because they're kind of boxing themselves into corners. But one person's saying, if we have true love, then we shouldn't have privacy. The other person's saying, we have to have privacy or we'll never have true love. You got to trust me. And if the neighbor and the speaker have reached that kind of point you can also think about it in other ways in terms of relationship. I need to see more of whatever. No, you don't. If you love me, you go at a mutually agreeable pace. If you love me, there are all kinds of ways of thinking about it, but they all have to do with boundaries. And when two people disagree on boundaries, it's kind of hard to renegotiate. The speaker wants the wall down and wants the neighbor to agree with him and kind of see things from the same point of view. The problem is if the neighbor wanted the fence up to preserve privacy, now that he knows the speaker wants the wall down, it's like, oh man, he wants to see me naked. He wants to see everything about my business. I want the wall twice as much as I did before. Well, now you got a double problem, because the neighbor has 2 times as many reasons to want the wall to stay up, but he really is dependent upon the speaker to mend the wall, just as the speaker's dependent upon the neighbor to tear it all the way down, because the speaker is now content to let it fall down, but it's not going to fall down as long as the neighbor keeps bringing the stones and putting them back on top. But the neighbor's never going to be able to fix the wall all the way because half the stones are on the speaker side. So they've got a dilemma. The dilemma is now the speaker wants it down, and the neighbor still wants it up. And the speaker decides that makes the neighbor a savage, like an old stone, savage, armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not just because he's in shadows, but darkness of like unknowing, of being savage, of just doing what your parents do, not ever asking why. And so he just keeps saying, good fences make good neighbors. And you're left to ask, and I think there are several significant questions. Who's right in an argument about what the boundary should be in a relationship? The person who wants boundaries to come down, or the person who says the boundaries should stay up? Is there a right? Or is it just something you have to negotiate? And if you lose the ability to negotiate, you kind of lose the relationship. This could also be about like different ways of looking at the world, because people who have epiphanies are the kinds of people who tend to want to do things not just because they've done them that way in the past, but because it's good to experiment. It's good to kind of mix things up. So maybe it's also about, a revolutionary point of view. We can't keep on thinking the Earth's the center of the universe. We need some new thinking here. We need a Galileo. We need somebody who's willing to say, this is not the way it really is. Let's take a chance. Let's be revolutionary. And somebody else who says, no, we need to keep it safe. We need to do it the way we've always done it. Because you take risks. You don't get Galileo. You get, a different kind of revolutionary. You get somebody like Stalin. So it could be two different philosophies. The philosophy, the way we've always done it is the best way. And then another philosophy that is, we need to make it new. We always need to make it new. Those are all possibilities. But I really want you to think about it and kind of own your own interpretation. So I'm going to stop there and leave you to think about it. And I want you to think about it carefully. We'll have plenty of time to do the essay question on the test. But this is the point that the essay question is about.